Good afternoon. We are at the second seminar of the series from our department. It is my pleasure to introduce Alessio Signorini. Alessio prepared a talk which is very close to what happened to his life after or also before leaving Pisa. We were discussing about the career of Alessio when he was in Pisa. Actually, he left Pisa after the bachelor degree. So he didn't start the master, and the story is particular because actually we were discussing in the last committees of the department committee what happens to the career of students and how much time they take to complete the degree. And the story of Alessio is different because actually he was remembering me. He was a student of mine, so we were much younger, and that he made about 20 exams in 2 months. Now this is actually totally different of every Gervasi analysis, so probably it's not in any cone that Gervasi did in the last months. But the key point there is why this boost in the exam numbers, because he found motivations, and the motivation was to go to US. And so he was able to complete a number of exams that makes also some problems about our system. So how this is possible. And I met Alessio because he wanted to do some things about information retrieval. At that time in my group there was Antonio Gulli. It was a perfect mix of people, the right people in the right time. And so this is the beginning of the story. Alessio also will tell what has happened in his life in the last, now it's 14 years. And you will find many surprises, and actually I think that this talk may give some inspiration to PhD students. As a coordinator of the PhD, they know that I always stress them to find opportunities and to search for opportunities. And I think that what happened to Alessio, it's an important example that, okay, opportunities can come from outside, but it's very important that you search for opportunities, so you are not passive, especially when you are doing your PhD. So I know that I am stressing you in these months, in this direction, and probably too much, but I think that is fundamental in your life, and Alessio is an example what opportunities can give to a person when, of course, the person has some skills to follow these opportunities. So I thank Alessio to be here, and questions at the end. Thanks.
Perfect. Welcome, everyone. If you speak English, awesome. They asked me to do this in English, so if you speak English, welcome. If you don't, enjoy the pictures. I'm very happy to be here. I went to the University of Pisa. I only did 3 years here. They tried to keep me longer, but I was, after I graduated in 2004, and they tried to keep me longer, but I wanted to leave. I loved it here. I loved learning about algorithms. I loved learning about software engineering. I loved, databases. I love everything. I've been working with computers my entire life. I was 14 in my room. There were like so many computers open, and I fixed everything. I probably recompiled the Linux kernel hundreds of times. And here, finally, found somebody teaching me something I actually wanted to learn. So I really liked it here. But in my life also, and when I did my thesis, I worked on a meta search engine with Antonio Gulli. So I built something that will simultaneously search on many search engines and collect the results. And we did it in a very smart way, which used very, very little resources on the computer, and it was very, very fast. We published a paper. I got to fly to Japan with this, so that was particularly cool. And so they wanted me to stay, and I wanted to stay because my family lives here. But a year before, a few years before, I met Bruno Codenotti. Bruno Codenotti was a professor here. He's now the CNR, does research. Before he was the director there. He's a family friend. And the year before I graduated, in 2003, he brought me to the University of Chicago. He was teaching there, so for a month he brought me there. And I loved it. This place was awesome. The teachers were awesome. The people were awesome. Everybody wanted to learn. Everything I had seen in movies was there. And so I wanted to go. And Paolo Ferragina really tried hard. Told me, you can work on anything you want. I do all those projects, you can pick one and run with it. And I say, I'm very thankful, but my heart was set. And so, I had to decide where to apply, and I didn't know much about the universities in the US. I had to decide where to apply, and there were big names and everything. But Bruno taught at the University of Iowa. If you don't know where Iowa is in the middle of the United States. That's a little red thing. It's about 5 hours from Chicago. It is a state, and I didn't know where it was, but Bruno insisted, you should check out Iowa. I loved it there, you should. And then I started, I had opportunities there, go to any university, a lot of university, because I was doing a bunch of extracurriculum activities, which made it easier for me. But then when you look at how much it costs to go to those universities every year, that's a lot. I mean, here at the time was $1,500 a year to go, no, $1,500 a year to go to the university. Carnegie Mellon wants $65,000 per year. And then 54, 28,000. I did apply to the University of Iowa. Somehow, they were willing to give me $16,000 a year to go there. And so that made the decision very easy. I went to Iowa. Again, Iowa. So this is so remote that my family here didn't know where I was studying for the first 2 or 3 years. Everybody was saying he studied nearby Chicago, which is like 8 hours from where I was, but close enough. So Iowa was wonderful. I arrived there, was August 14, 2004, and I arrived and it was like this. The sky was blue, people were out, grass everywhere, green everything. I thought, wonderful. I didn't know what to expect. I was flying from Pisa. I'd never been really to the United States besides Chicago. And it was wonderful. And I loved everything in Iowa. The downtown was very pretty. The sports in the university were exactly like in the movies, which made it very cool. Buses actually worked. And the town itself was pretty. So, and there were smart people. I was given an office. Rajiv was my office mate. He was working on some problem. I had no clue what it was. He was scribbling stuff like this on the blackboard every day. I felt like in the movie Will Hunting, like January Belle is called here. I thought it was getting smarter just being there. And I loved it. I really loved it. And then tornado season arrived. Because nobody, not even Bruno, told me that there were tornadoes in Iowa. And that freaks you out. And it's not like one tornado once in a while. There are a lot of tornadoes. And like when you have to travel, from one place to the other, it's like Pac-Man. Try to get to here, from here, the smartest path, the shortest path, avoiding tornadoes, which is a problem that you generally don't have. And that's even worse when you're watching a TV show in your home and it's raining outside and you're there all comfortable and this thing pops up on the screen. All the TVs stop, there's like screeching noise and say, tornado warning, go seek shelter, run in the basement. And I did. I ran in the basement and I stayed there 2 or 3 hours because nobody told me how long I should be there for. And so I was there and waiting. I grabbed my computer, I went there in the basement, and for 2 hours I was there, God, why did I come here to Iowa? I should have listened to my grandmother and stayed here in Pisa. And then I thought I would get out and see this. And I was freaking out, saying, my mom, how can I tell my mother and that I'm well and everything? 3 hours passed, nobody told me anything, so I get out and people are flying kites in the park. Because apparently there are various degrees of tornado warning, and you learn it only after a year that you are there. There is tornado alerts, tornado warning, and then there is run for your life. And then you learn that you only have to really care about the run for your life. And then winter arrived. In Iowa, winter is minus 35 degrees. Also something that everybody forgot to mention when I applied to Iowa. It was very, very cold. I had to blink very fast, otherwise your thing will freeze. I was totally unprepared. I will go to the office with 2 pair of jeans and several shirts, which then I will unwrap when I got here. It was very, very cold. Iowa is a wonderful place in the 3 months of summer, but everything else is a little bit challenging. However, this means that for 9 months, you actually can dedicate yourself to research and ideas. And that was very, very important to me because right now I live in a beautiful place called Santa Barbara. It's in California. It's always sunny. It's always nice. There is a wonderful university there. It's called University of California, Santa Barbara. If I had gone there, I will not be here speaking to you because I will not have done everything I did. But because I was 9 months with winter and tornadoes and I had to study, I had to do research, that worked out. So what I did, Antonio Gulli, and Paolo Ferragina were my advisors, and Antonio Gulli and I had this idea. We wanted to count how many pages were in the internet, which now seems silly, but at the time was actually a big deal because nobody had done it for a while. And so what do we do? Well, I built that thing that connected to a lot of search engines, searched for pages, and so we figured, what about we look at the intersection of search engines to understand how big is the internet? That's a good idea. We already had the software to do it, so perfect. We just had to scale it. University of Iowa had, in my department, we had 4 computer labs. Each lab had about 70 machines, and so I thought, that's a great idea. I go on every machine, install my software, and start downloading the internet, which seemed a good idea at the time because my software was used very, very little resources. What I didn't think about was the bandwidth of the internet. I took down the university. We were blocked by every major search engine, Microsoft, Google, Yahoo, and Alta Vista at the time, and Ask.com. And I got my account suspended. And it took me like weeks to explain that I didn't try to install something to download porn, but it was for a scientific experiment. But in the end, we did it. We managed to do it, and we published the paper. And it was another paper I got to fly to Japan for. Again, not a big deal now. Internet is much bigger now. But at the time, it was a cool thing. That paper got me a little bit, not famous, but got me my name put my name there. And I had the chance to go to work for one of those big search engines. Antonio Gulli was going to Ask. He spoke very well about Ask, and so I decided to join Ask. I joined Ask as a software engineer, and after a few years, 3 years, I was the director of technology for the search engine. In Ask, I got to work on a lot of interesting things. Antonio was taking care of news, and I got to work with him on the news stuff. So it was crawling and parsing of news sources, clustering of news, clustering of clusters, which means understanding how the news changed over time, picking the best image, picking the best video, ranking the news. I also got to work on classifications, getting pages, understanding what the pages were talking about, understanding what the query was about to search. Because you think it's simple, but it's not that much, right? People, if you search for Apache on a search engine, because you're a computer scientist, you think to Apache with a web server. But normal people think about generally the Indians. And some other people will think about the helicopter. And so to provide the best results, you can't base on link, you can't do that. You have to understand what the intent is. And sometimes the intent changes depending on where you live. A query means something here, it means something different in the US, something different in California, something different in New York City. So that was interesting. Porn filtering, I got to work on porn filtering. I had to manually look a lot of porn to make sure that was classified correctly. So much that we got to the team had a post-it behind their back that says, "I'm looking at porn for work." Because, kids filtering, the opposite. We wanted to make sure the result did not contain any. And if you think that porn filtering is actually easy, porn filtering is super hard. Super hard to detect nipples and stuff, and super hard to understand what people write in the pages. Stuff like water sports, if looked on the page, that's actually porn, and you will never know. And I'm not going to tell you why, but if you look why, you'll understand. So it was very tough. And then I got to work on kind of semantic search, or understanding the pages. So we all hoped for semantic web. Nobody did it, so we started tackling how to make the web semantic. A lot of vertical search. Search for recipes, search for flights, search for anything. Because once you classify the web and you have all the pages saved, we could just pick, search in a particular class. If we know that all these pages were recipes, we could search there when you search for tomatoes and mozzarella, and we can tell you all the recipes that contain tomato mozzarella. And then we will extract information. Recipes have grams or cups and ingredients, so we could extract all those. We could provide direct answering. There is only a few ways to say when somebody was born, and so we can detect all those, understand that Britney Spears was born in 1982, and now when somebody asked when was Britney Spears born, we could just say 1982. Or how old was Britney Spears, and we could just answer that. That was a lot of fun. Another cool thing about Ask.com was that Ask.com was owned by a company called Interactive Corporation, IAC. IAC owns a ton of property that you probably don't know because you are in Italy, but they are like very famous in the United States. Millions and millions of people go there every day. What I got to do for IAC after a while was something that's called technical due diligence. So every time IAC wanted to acquire a company, or every time the company wanted to be acquired by IAC, they will send me, and I will figure out how much it will cost us to rebuild the technology of this company. So we knew how much to pay for it. And it was very fun. I got to see a lot of companies. Some I can mention, some I can't. One I can mention generally is Siri, the one you have on your phone. They came to us first to see if we wanted to buy them. I did say yes, but they didn't buy them. Apple bought them. You have it on your phone right now. I got to see a lot of other cool companies. One company I got to see, one person I got to meet was Kimball Musk. Kimball is the brother of Elon. I got to meet both of them. At the time, I didn't know what they were doing. I didn't know SpaceX and Tesla and all the stuff. Those were the two people that wanted to sell me this company, Medium. Medium was a company who had toolbars and will show, if the two of us were friends, I could see where you were on the web in that particular moment. It was not very interesting. We had toolbars too, so I said, no, we don't buy your company. However, I became friends with Kimball. Kimball and I spent months talking on the phone about what could be good, what could be cool to build together. He eventually invited me in Boulder, Colorado. That's where he was living, another lovely town in the United States. He invited me in the summer. It gets very cold in the winter as well. He didn't say that when we met. He invited me in Boulder, and after a while, I decided to join them. I joined him, and we built One Riot. At One Riot, I was the director of search. One Riot, what did, everybody at that time was moving from, domain-based ranking to, link-based ranking, page rank stuff. What we did there was different. We did social pulse ranking. That was the time in when people started sharing links on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, and whatnot. And so what we did, we got access to all those feeds, and we saw who shared what, and we started calculating the ranking based on that. So a lot of people were sharing Britney Spears shaved his head, and that page will pop up in our ranking. And then some other news will pop up. And then we'll look who shared what, who guessed exactly what became popular, and so on. And so we'll give weight to those people so that then we'll catch those things earlier and earlier. So that's how the ranking was based, basically. It worked out. At some point, we were approached by a few search engines, which bought part of the company, and then Walmart Labs bought another part of the company. That was another fun experience. In that year, I was traveling a lot to meet various people. At some point, I was in New York City. If you have never been to New York City, there is a lot of subway stations. On top of the subway station, there are generally those digital billboards. Those are just big screens with a computer inside that show commercials in rotation. When I went back to Boulder, that's where I was living, I was talking to somebody that was interested in advertising, and they told me that the problem they had there was that they didn't know who was looking at those things and for how long. Because who sells advertising there will tell you that 100,000 people walk by there every day. Because they want to sell you that thing, and that's how they justify the price. But you don't know if it's true, and you don't know if those people actually look at it. Sometimes there is a subway entrance, and you have to go down the steps, and there will be the digital billboard here. And so people believe that you look at it because it's right there. But truthfully, everybody looks down when you have to go downstairs. You don't go downstairs like this. And so nobody was looking at those things, but that was sold to you for a lot of money because that was a subway entrance and that was important. And so I thought, I can fix that. I can take a camera. I can take face recognition software, even like very simple one. I started with OpenCV, which does AR transform, and you can do that. Simple analytics software, and I built a company that was called Immersi Labs. 3 months later, I had a company that was called Immersi Labs. Me and then 2 other co-founders. Immersi Labs actually worked. In Boulder, we had 1 digital billboard, and so we saturated the market after 1 month because we got that digital billboard. That was it. But we did a lot of cool things. We were on the New York Times. We were in CNN. They interviewed us, so it was very cool. And one thing that made it even cooler is that we were accepted by Techstars. Techstars is a startup accelerator, one of the 2 famous ones in Italy, in the US. So Techstars is a startup accelerator. So what you do, they give you some money, let's say $60,000 for 6% of your company. And for 3 months, you work in a space that they give you. And they introduce you to mentors, they introduce you to investors, they help you build your company. I started the company, I didn't really know how to run the company. I saw Kimball do it, but that was my first one. And so Techstars was extremely helpful for me to start this company. Another very, very cool thing about that year in Techstars, so we relocated to New York City, by the way, to start this company because they had a lot of digital billboards. Another very, very cool thing about Techstars that year is that there was a reality TV show attached to it. So we were going to be filmed for 3 months, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. which was a very interesting experience in my life because you don't realize, when you watch the reality TV shows here, I mean, some are fake, but in our case, we actually were just doing our life. You don't realize why people do stupid things on reality TV. And you wonder why. They know the cameras are there. And so the reason why it was happening was this. There were 2 crews, 6 people in each crew, and you never see the crew on cameras, but what happens is that the crew that's about to start recording will have lunch and dinner with us. They become your friends. And they cut out the parts in which the other people are there. They are not supposed to be there, but they became our friends. We are used to have them around every day. And so sometimes those people were just telling me about their weekend. Sometimes they had the camera on top of their shoulder, and at that point you just forget. And I didn't say anything stupid, but a lot of friends of mine did. And that was on TV. Everyone saw. That wasn't cool. So did Bloomberg, they did this cool shot where I just explained somebody like Pythagoras theorem on the glass, but they thought it was very cool. And so they projected that a lot of time. We sold this company to Kairos. Kairos is a company who still does that. They put a web camera inside digital billboards, and now the digital billboards are interactive. If you go to New York today, if you go in the subway, that technology is there. That is my technology. Or in Fifth Avenue, like in the Gap on Fifth Avenue, I think. Now, one thing I neglected to say is that I was going to University of Iowa, but then when I moved to New York for Ask.com in 2006, I changed university. I went to Rutgers University, which was closer to Ask.com, because I did want to finish my PhD. I left Iowa because I got this offer by Ask.com, and when I spoke to the director of the department, he said, look, the offer they made you, you are already earn way more money than I do, and so you should just go, and we'll figure out the PhD later. So I moved to Rutgers. I started my classes there. I had an agreement with Rutgers that they will recognize all my credits after I did 4 classes. By the 2008, the director of the department changed and said my agreement was not valid anymore. And so basically they wanted me to start over. And I said, no way. And so I moved back to Iowa. I transferred back to Iowa in 2008 when I was moving to Boulder, Colorado. I didn't have any reason to stay at Rutgers. I had to start anyway. I couldn't be there. And the agreement with Iowa was that instead of studying or doing research on what I wanted to do research on, I will do research on what they wanted to do research on. So I was doing research in epidemiology, which at first I wasn't that much into it because I had done web stuff and search engines and databases and all those things, information retrieval and parsing and classification. And so I wasn't that interested in epidemiology, but that was the agreement, and so I will do it. And that was a great thing that happened to me because again, I wouldn't be here if that didn't happen. So epidemiology is studying diseases, how they move, how people get infected, and so on. Computational epidemiology is using computers to do that. When I started there were not many people doing it. So the problems that we were tackling were actually very simple for a computer scientist. The models they were using was very, very simple. They were based on Excel and stuff, but we were actually doing it with computers and it was very simple. Like one of the problems that we had, like if you have a stroke, you have to sometimes you have to take a drug that's called a thrombolytic in 3 hours from when you have the stroke. 20% of people benefit from having this drug. They actually are better if they take it, rather than not. In Iowa, there were only 7 stroke centers, and that covered 35% of the population. And they were trying to figure out how do we cover more people, and where do we put those things. And they were trying to do that by hand. They were saying, okay, maybe we put it there, maybe we put it there. And I say, well, I know how to solve this problem. Roberto taught me at school. We do the knapsack problem, but it's a maximum coverage problem. And so this is the allocation I put in place, and then we had to open 7 new, and basically we went from 35 to 79% of coverage. There are 85,000 stroke every year in Iowa, and 1,400 people benefit from this drug, and so it's better that they have the possibility to go to a stroke center near them, so they can get this drug. So that's lives that you save. Same thing for other Sentinel websites. They had sites. Those are doctors. They reported to the health system of the United States how people were doing when people are sick. They were covering only 39% of the population. We relocated them in a way that was compatible with their plans, and now 70% of the population was covered. Because surprisingly, knowing how many people are sick is actually an interesting question. And at the time, the way they were doing it in Iowa was they had, not in Iowa, in the United States, and at that time, they had 100 doctors that at the end of every week, they will write down on a piece of paper, on a little card, how many people they went to visit the doctor and how many of those actually had the flu. and they would mail this card to a center in the United States where those people will collect all of them, and somebody on Excel will put down how many people were sick. And then they will make an estimation of how many people were sick in the United States, divided in 10 regions. And this process will take 2-3 weeks. And the granularity was 1/10 of the United States. So they would say, okay, everybody on the East Coast, we believe that 3 weeks ago, 7% of people were sick, which is the best they could do. And so they thought it was great, but to a computer scientist, that's not great. First of all, you use paper, you should use a computer at minimum, and transmit stuff over the internet. But I thought there were much better ways to do these kinds of things. And so in one riot, I'd look at all this Facebook and Twitter stream and all the streams of information. And I noticed that people often said something about their health on Twitter. When they woke up, they will say, "Oh, I still feel sick from last night," or "It's 5 days I have the flu," "I can't stop coughing," and all those things. And so I thought, well, I wonder if I can use that as self-reported information about where people are sick and how people are sick and if they are recovering. And so I tried. If you look on Twitter, you can find a lot of stuff. You have to remove the awesome Viagra ads, and you have to remove people stuff that are not related to flu, people who are sick of their job, who doesn't matter. But once you classify all the data, once you remove all the junk, there is some signal there. And if you take those, and I build a system, machine learning, that try to understand how many tweets that were necessary to match the percentage that the health department got, and it worked. So the red line was my prediction, the blue one was the reported. And do remember, my prediction arrived 3 weeks earlier. The difference there was 0.5, the average distance. Mine arrived 3 weeks earlier, and I had the granularity of the city. I could tell you in every city how many people were sick 3 weeks earlier. And that was great. And the CDC, which is the Center for Disease and Control in Iowa, adopted this system. And now, in 10 years, they probably improved it. But that's how they started. And now that's what they use. I also published a paper and ended up being my PhD thesis, something similar to this. Knowing that people are sick is very cool. Knowing something even cooler is to know where people will be sick tomorrow. And so I needed a travel model. So I knew that people were sick here. I wanted to know how they will travel, so I will know how the disease will travel. And I did it. And so how to do it? You can buy flight tickets, you can buy traffic things, very complicated to buy those things. But at the time, there was this company called Foursquare. People will go in places and check in. People will go to the gym and check in, go to the doctor, check in, go to a restaurant, check in. They will just tap on their phone. And why they will check in? They will check in to get badges. I don't know why they are cool, but people did it a lot. People will check in, check in, check in. And I used those to see how people moved, how people went between places. And so I built maps of how people moved in cities. I built maps on how people move around the US. And so now I had, when people were sick, I had a travel model. And so not only I knew where the disease was today, but we'll also know where the disease is going to go tomorrow. Again, CDC was very happy. I wrote a paper about it. They use it today. At the time, also, people started using those digital devices that will measure everything, how much you sleep, how much you walk, what you eat, how much you weigh, and all those things. Those devices somehow, by default, were programmed to tweet about your things, which was awesome for me because I was already collecting everybody's tweet. And so, there were tweets about their weight, how much they ran, and other things. And so I collected those, and I started doing statistics. People run more in California and New York City, and they don't run in Iowa where there are tornadoes. That makes sense. That was a paper. This was the paper about the average weight of people and how that compared to what the health department knew. All those from tweets, and I published a lot of those. I did another cool things that's somehow creepy, but I could follow one person, I could target on one person, or many people, and see how many check-ins, how many tweets, and how many kilometers they did per day, per week, and monitor them over a long period of time and understand what was their normal, and then understand when there were outliers. And outliers may have meant that they were on vacation or that they were sick. So, in 2011, when I was selling my company about the digital billboards, I was paired up with Christine Lemke. Christine had a company that was called Sense Network. What they did, they basically spied on cell phone services to understand interest of people. They will understand that you like to go to McDonald's, that you like to go to other things, and build a profile of you so they could target with advertising. They thought her and I should talk because I had an advertising company that targeted people. She had an advertising company that targeted people. They put us together. Neither of us wanted to talk about advertising. We became super good friends. Christine is super smart. She worked, she started Sense Networks. She started Channel IQ, another advertising company. She worked at Microsoft in the Xbox. And so her and I knew that we wanted to work together. And for a year, we spoke about what we will build. Both of us were interested in healthcare. We wanted to go from healthcare like this to healthcare like this. We wanted to introduce computers and artificial intelligence in healthcare. We didn't know how to do it. It took us a year to think about it, but we did. At some point, we had an idea. So we assembled a good team. Christine brought in Mickey Nash. They worked before. Mickey was running sales. I brought in Luca Foschini. Luca, maybe some of you know Luca. Luca is from Pisa. He went here to Sant'Anna. He was computer engineering. I met Luca when I was 14. Roberto Grossi introduced us because we were both in the International Olympics of Informatics. And so they taught us how to do algorithms. And Luca was honestly one of the best computer scientists I know. And so I was very happy to bring him in. He runs data science in my company. And so we did what everybody does. We got the house and started working, like every startup that you hear about. And we started the company that's now called Evidation Health. When we started, it was just the 4 of us. Now it's a big company, hundreds of people, 4 offices, and so on. But we started, the 4 of us. We were like data experts with a dream, because we all wanted to use what we knew about data to healthcare. But it turns out you cannot just go in a hospital and ask them for their data and tell them, give me your medical data, I will do great things with it. Or to an insurance company. When we went, they all said, no, I don't know you, I'm not going to give you data, there is privacy concern and all those things. So getting healthcare data was super hard. And so we decided to create our own data. We created Achievement. Achievement is an app, web app, iOS, Android. You can go and sign up today. Right now we have 2.5 million members. Achievement is a place where you create an account for free, and then you can connect your Fitbit, your Runkeeper, or whatever health app you use. And every time you do something healthy, we give you points. Every time you get points, you can redeem them for money. We actually give you cash for how many points you get. That worked really well. 2.5 million people are using it today. That allowed us to create this very, very, very rich corpus of data, because we had all the tweets and all the Fitbit data and all the steps and how much they slept and what people ate and how many people ran for millions and millions of people. And then we'll ask surveys, and we do ask surveys, and we'll ask people, do you smoke? And they would say yes or not for 50 points. Do you have any chronic disease? Were you sick last week? And so on. So we built our data set to do our experiments. And it worked. Achievement produces a lot of research. We research on diabetes, we research on how pregnancy affects sleeps, a lot of open source research that you can find on our website. There is a link later on. We published all this, and with Achievement plus the research, we went back to the hospital and to the insurance companies, and we said, this is the proof, give us the data. And it worked. They gave us the data. They gave us a little bit of data. Imagine insurance company. They give us a little bit of their data, their medical data. So everybody, for every one of their members, we knew everything that happened to them, all the medical records for going back like 15 years. And this for millions of people. And we combined that with some of the Runkeeper data, Fitbit data that we were at that point working with them to obtain. And we built our company. The company grew, and so we now provide 3 main things. We provide data connectivity, so we get data from hundreds of devices, on behalf of these companies. It's very high scalable. Data is, devices data. There is weather data, census data, or electronic medical record. And this is not an easy problem. Some of these devices work at 100 hertz, which means they 100 times per second take a measurement. They have 10 sensors. It's one of these sensors return 1 or 3 floats. So imagine that is 100 times per second, 10 floats, for millions of people, for every second of the day, for every day of the year. Those are trillions and trillions of data points that enter our system every day. That's for one device and one client. And we have many clients, many devices. So the problem of scalability here it's very interesting. We also offer studies. We help people run studies. So somebody wants to study the effect of multiple sclerosis on sleep, we help them do that. We have sites in the United States. We have a system that people can sign up. We'll monitor what happened to those people. And we offer that as a service. And all this is powered by a data platform. A data platform that we've developed internally to ingest all this data, process the data, and do research on top. And now it's licensed to people. So we allow clients to access it. It's uses Jupyter Notebook. It's HIPAA compliant. You don't know what HIPAA is, but it's a very big deal in the United States. Allows us to do exploration and research with Python on lab. A very important thing about the data platform has to be absolutely extremely secure. So for example, that one, we deploy one of those for every client, and any machine in that one cannot talk to the outside. Every machine cannot talk to any other machines. They use AWS and S3 buckets to dump the data. Data can only go in one direction. So for example, there is an FTP server. If you drop the data on the FTP server checks that the data is okay, the consistency, and then moves them on the S3 bucket. The user on the FTP server can only put the data there, cannot list, cannot get. And as soon as the data is moved, it's deleted from the disk. The machine can only put the data on the SD bucket, so it cannot read from it. So the machine cannot talk to anybody and can only receive the connection from a specific IP outside. So even if you found a way to corrupt that machine, you couldn't talk to anything else in our platform. You couldn't read the data on our platform. And this is for every machine in that thing. All the data gets inside our thing, gets processed, and gets normalized. So the data, the steps that we get from Fitbit looks like the steps that we get from Garmin and Jabon and anything else. The medical data that we get from one client are the same as the other one. We do that so that when you go do research on it, you don't have to care about the format of the data, because all the data to you looks the same. And we save them in a distributed system, distributed fashion, so it's faster. You can use Spark, you can use neural network to compute stuff. There are a bunch of other details there that I'm not going to bore you right now, but if you're interested, I can tell you later. We publish a lot. That's very important to me and Luca to keep publishing. And so for all the research that we do that we can publish, we do. In the past 2 years, we published 35 papers in the major conference in the United States. In 2 months, I'm going to speak to the Alzheimer Association of America. Me, who didn't know anything about Alzheimer a year ago, but I was dropped into this research. I did some research on Alzheimer, and we come up with something very cool, which I'm going to present. We do a lot of research that we cannot publish. So 35 is plus is what we published up to 3 months ago. We probably did hundreds of research. We study anything. We study, we help DARPA. That's another cool thing that happened to us. DARPA is the research branch of the military in the United States. They came to us to ask our help to do a few research. 2 of them that I can talk about are these. One, they wanted to improve the effectiveness of flu vaccinations. So they wanted to see, if we could better understand if the vaccine will work on certain individual, so that we will spend more time convincing those people to vaccinate and less in convincing these other people to vaccinate. And then they to see if we could detect Alzheimer through their voice. That's a research I took care of. So what happens is that veterans from military, they have their own hospitals and their own medical system in the United States. And so they will, something's called a Veteran Affair, VA for short. So they will call the VA and say, can I get an appointment? I need my checkup and so on. All those phone calls are recorded, like when you call anybody here, they are recorded. And so they asked me, could we detect Alzheimer from these phone calls? And we did. And I can tell you that we can do it even listening to the person for only one time. If we listen to your voice through the phone, so the quality was very bad. If we do some acoustic properties of the sound, we actually got a good enough precision. Once we started tokenizing what people say, not understanding the words, but we understand, okay, word, silence, word, silence, word, silence, and understanding how long people take to respond to a question and how long are the responses and so on, we can do even better. And the best result is achieved when you can actually do the diarization and translations speech to text, and you can understand the words, because if you understand the complexity of the structure of the sentences that they pronounce, you can understand, it's a very, very good indicator if they have Alzheimer. And people in Alzheimer knew this for years, but they never proved it at a large scale. We had access to thousands of phone calls, so we can empirically prove that that was actually right. and the system gets an AUC of 0.92, which is very high and usable in systems as an indicator, and so that will be deployed by DARPA in the things. Those two research will be available publicly in about a month or so. DARPA has to clear it and understand, make sure there is no national security implications. So why superhero? Well, you heard, I do stuff that try to save lives, detecting Alzheimer early. We do a lot of research. We try to, if you have one Fitbit like this, we do some research that if I know you have multiple sclerosis, I can, with a good probability, tell you if you're going to have a relapse in a few days. I can detect if you have migraines. I can detect if you have other diseases. I can't say everything we do, but a lot of those things. And all the things we do are aimed to try to improve medicine, to bring some artificial intelligence and continuous monitoring. Because what happens now is that when you're sick, you go to the doctor. And so the doctor sees you once a year or when you're really sick, which is very bad for your health. But with Fitbits or iWatch and whatever, we can monitor you constantly. And monitoring constantly, we can understand when things start going off the track, way before you feel very sick. And that's what I want to do. That's what motivates me now. That's why I started this company. We want to add all this data and machine learning so that we can help the doctors make decisions. The doctors today, you go there, your knee hurts. It's not going to say, oh, it's going to be good. It sends you to an orthopedic. Or it sends you have a problem at the thyroid, it sends you to an endocrinologist. And so what we want to provide is an AI-based consult. So the doctor, the computer, will look at all your data and understand you better than what the doctor sees you in 5 minutes. And so to prove that I was better than Superman, this is the thing. There is a movie, Man of Steel, where Superman is one of the last movies. If you tally up all the people that Superman saved, and you understand that those people will pretty much have lived 50 years, so he saved 38 people. Those people probably will have lived 50 years, so a total of 1,900 years. Okay? So he saved a total of 1,900 years of lives. Humana is one of our clients. They have 5.5 people. 30% of those have chronic condition. I can guarantee you we did something that improves chronic conditions. So let's assume that I even added 1 day to the life of all those people that we did something for a total of 4,520 years. So Superman saved 1,900, I saved 4,500. That is why what we do is better than Superman. If it sounds interesting, send me an email, or if you're interested in those kind of stuff, go on my website. There are all my publications. You can go on the aviation.com website, research. There are all our publications. If you want to know more about fun stuff I do, on my website there are a bunch of videos. Look at the one from Harvard. I gave a presentation at Harvard that talks about a lot of personal research I do. And again, send me an email and we can talk. Or I will be here for the next hour and a half if the baby doesn't cry.